Hello and welcome to our sixth edition of Re-elect Donald Ramotar. I'm your host Roopnarine, and joining me on the program today is no other than businessman Clinton Erling, who is a national candidate for the People's Progressive Party Civic. Welcome to the program, Clinton.
Thank you very much, Romel, and good evening to your viewers.
Well, first off, I know you would have discussed this before, but for the benefit of the viewers of this particular program, could you share with us exactly what are some of the what influenced your decision to come on board with Team Donald Ramotar?
There's a number of factors that motivated the decision, Romel. Starting with the most obvious one for me is the PPP being the greatest political party historically. This is the party that fought for Guyana's independence. This is the party that brought back democracy in 1992, and this is a party that has clearly demonstrated over a number of years its commitment to the people of Guyana. Looking at the list of candidates before making my decision, you saw more than 50% of the candidates on that list being young people under the age of 45. And you even look there, you look deeper, you'll see a significant number also being 35 and under.
Yes.
And not only the list comprising of young candidates, but also the PPP has a history where you see tangibly young people in leadership positions. Look at President Donald Ramotar. He was just 35 years old when he ascended to the highest office of the land. You look at other examples.
President Barjagbio.
President Barjagbio. And you look at other examples of ministers
Yes.
who were very young. Irfan Ali comes to mind, Robert Prasad, Priya Manik Chand, even Dr. Ashley Singh. These were all young people who were given significant leadership roles and responsibilities, and they have delivered. So I have no doubt going forward that this trend will continue. Secondly, you look at the diversity and the makeup of the candidates on the list. We had a number of female candidates on our list that met the 35% even on nomination day. You saw the ethnic religious breakdown. That was a motivating factor also for me. But importantly, and me coming from the private sector and understanding how the economy works and the importance of a very solid economy for a country's development and for the improvements of people welfare, I think the PPPC has the best team that can move the country's economic agenda forward more than any other group. We have capable individuals on our ticket. You look at Dr. Ashley Singh, no one can question his acumen or credentials. Also, the same can be said for former President Barjagbio. He now heads the Economic Council. We have a number of other professionals who came in, Mahindra Sharma, Badri Prasad, Raj Singh, businessman Peter Ramsuru, even myself being the former head of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Vice Chairman of the Private Sector Commission. We can talk all we want about putting plans in place, but we also need to ensure that we have the right people to execute, and I believe our party has the best people to execute the economic plans that we've set out in our manifesto.
Now, just to build on that a bit, obviously 2015 will mark, is a very significant year. At the end of 2015, Guyana will become the first Caribbean country in history to record 9 consecutive years of economic growth. Now, that is obviously significant, and I will stress the importance of continuity, obviously, because as you just mentioned, you have to have the right people in place, but equally also its track record and what you have delivered thus far. So going into after May 11, the importance will be to continue building on what has already been achieved, and obviously that is very important.
Most certainly. What I've said to people, you look at, now is the time, we just released our manifesto. Now is the time you see many manifestos coming out. I tell people that manifestos aren't a snapshot in time. Some people ask the question, you haven't done a lot since 2011, or your manifesto resembles some of the things we've seen in 2011. I tell people our manifesto started since 1992. It's a continuation of that process. The current manifesto will take us into the future. Not just 5 years from now, some of the projects which we've identified might take us 10, 15 years to achieve. And like you rightly said, we have a very solid record, not just the past 9 consecutive years of economic growth, but we've had around 17 to 18 years out of our 22 years in government of economic growth, which is significant. And also it represents the most exemplary record within the CARICOM region in terms of growth and our growth profile. So the plans in our manifesto and the plans that we've developed and policies are a continuation of a process that started 23 years ago now, 23 years ago, and it's something that we intend to continue.
Now, we spoke about opportunities and we spoke about youths because obviously heading into this election, youths play a very pivotal, critical role in this election. One of the ways of increasing opportunities for youths, providing a better future for them, is job creation. And this would be obviously something that you would be interested in. You know, as a businessman, the importance of that to any business, to any economy. And what we've been seeing, if we don't have to go back too far, just a few months ago, the creation of not just hundreds but thousands of jobs.
Look, the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport, and this is on the young people side, they did one of the most extensive survey of young people, and they tried to identify what are some of the major needs and issues that young people care about. The number one is job creation and job opportunities, employment. So it's very critical, and it's not just a young people issue. You can, if you do a survey in any country, and including ours, employment will come out on top.
Indeed.
And we have in our manifesto as one of our main pillars, we have about 6 main pillars, but job creation, the economy, has been pivotal to that. But you can't separate the other pillars of the manifesto and isolate job creation, because job creation is a comprehensive and holistic process. Every socio-economic, health, cultural, all these affect job creation in every area and in every region of this country. So you have to look at our manifesto as a whole in terms of how do we go about creating the necessary jobs. With the PVPC, we've already created the foundation. We took an economy in 1992 that basically was at ground zero. We had high levels of debt then, we had a debt to GDP ratio of somewhere around 700%, now we brought it down. Our macroeconomic fundamentals is very solid and sound currently. The challenge for us now is how do we take that forward? In terms of job creation, the ideal route would be to ensure that our private sector leads in that process. So a lot of emphasis is placed in our manifesto in terms of developing our private sector. And not only our private sector at the top level, we're talking most of the micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. You look there, the president spoke last week and he announced that for the first time in 2 decades, they're going to issue bank licenses to open the sector to competition. That will help to bring down some of the interest rates, but you look specifically in our manifesto, there's plans and programs there where we incentivize the current banks to offer concessional loans and guarantees to small, medium-sized enterprises, and also to those who are moving towards what we call non-traditional or the modern sector, the industrial sector. There's lots of incentives there with the banking structure. There's a revolving fund also for agriculture, so we're not forgetting that. That revolving fund will help those smaller businesses who can't access traditional finance from the commercial banks. Access finance, and then eventually they migrate and they evolve into the normal banking sector where they can access finance to expand their enterprises.
Great. What we'll do is take a short break and we'll be back. Welcome back. Just a reminder, you are looking at our sixth edition of Re-elect Donald Ramotar. I'm your host, Roopnarine, and our guest on today's program is businessman Clinton Erling, who is a national candidate for the PPPC. Now, we want to continue our discussion by focusing, now shifting focus to the issue of corruption, and that has been one of the favorite topics of the opposition, corruption. Um, Before I get to you, not to mention that I think Ms. Afriko Selman, former APNU Member of Parliament, has pointed out on the elections trail thus far that since at the point that she left the opposition, their campaign manager, Mr. Joseph Harmon, at that time, had not yet submitted the the financial statement from the last election campaign. So there is no accountability whatsoever internally in the opposition, but they come publicly and they try to lecture others on the importance of accountability and transparency. And it was no less than Mr. Aubrey Norton who stated publicly that he has evidence of internal corruption within Congress Place. So that is very instructive in itself. But let us focus now nationally, the whole issue of corruption, and that is one of the issues they have raised. Obviously, our manifesto focuses on that.
Our manifesto does, under what we call in fair governance. It's important, this discussion on corruption right now, is a lot of it is based on perception.
Yes.
Even you talk to Transparency International, they tell you it's all perception index they have. What was revealing to me lately or recently, in Trinidad, their Transparency International chapter, they had their guest speaker. I think it was the president of the chapter was speaking. And he said something which I've been saying, and I continue to say and say in our manifesto. The real challenge when it comes to this issue is to focus on building the right institutions to curb and reduce it, as opposed to trying to point out one or two isolated incidences. Pointing them out doesn't solve the problem. What solves it is setting the institutions. We've had some difficulties. I spoke about the anti-money laundering law, which restricts the ability of the FIU, the Financial Intelligence Unit. We're looking to set up the Public Procurement Commission. That has to be a two-thirds. It has to be done by both sides of the House to ensure that our legislation is passed. We need to improve our judiciary. We need to improve our police force. All of these are initiatives which in our manifesto we're talking about strengthening even further, because we've done a lot from 1992 to current in terms of those institution building. In 92 most of them were almost non-existent. People forget, people have short memories. And over the course of those years we've set up all these different structures. Now we have even the ombudsman offices there. We intend to provide in our manifesto even more support to that office to ensure that citizens have redress whenever there's any issue. The investigative capacity of the police force and so forth. All of those are important. Romel, we need to shift this conversation, and our manifesto rightly does it when we talk about both fair governance and also security sector reform. Because without that, we can sit here all day and I can perceive and tell you I think that somebody's corrupt or some institution or organization. The important focus should be on fixing the institutions. The PPPC intends to do so with our manifesto and our plans.
Now, as we get closer to wrap up time for the program, I think it's very important to also stress on the fact that our manifesto focus on every single sector in the country, every single area across the country. It will touch every single Guyanese, and obviously in one of the areas would be rural development. You have a lot of initiatives that will focus on that. A lot of them come out of the LCDS, etc.
Yeah, what we want to do is to try to not only focus on the urban centers, Georgetown in particular. We're trying to diversify away from Georgetown to ensure that a lot of the rural communities are self-sustainable. If you look at Region 6, we're looking to take a deep water harbor there.
Now, contrasting the opportunities that you've mentioned, the special focus on developing small business in Guyana, and also the whole idea of empowering the private sector more. This is an election, and we have to obviously compare and contrast what is the alternative. And I'm sure that you would not have been pleased over the past few years, we have seen almost what seems to be a deliberate campaign to vilify the private sector, to vilify overseas investors who are coming here, and they are obviously not just creating jobs, but they're creating a lot of opportunities for other small businesses as well to mushroom and flourish in the country.
Look, it's important, one of the important governments make money by collecting taxes. They can borrow to finance whatever projects they want to do. And if they're in the business sector, the productive sector, the income they earn there, they make some. But it's critical for small economies like Guyana to attract foreign direct investments and ensure that foreign investors come here. We've seen over the past 3 years efforts and attempts by the opposition to frustrate some of those foreign investments. The biggest one that came to mind was the Blackstone Group, who was attached to the Mila Falls. They were so frustrated because they couldn't get that sign-off in terms of the opposition endorsement of that project, which is a national project in scope, which brings down the cost of electricity, which if you speak to anybody in the private sector, or even domestic consumers, you don't need to just go private sector, but they are also part of the private sector equation, because you, the domestic consumer, you're the one who encourages a lot of the businesses to operate. You have the disposable income and the spending power that we rely on. So when we don't bring that down, we also saw with the AML legislation that wasn't passed in Parliament, that's making it harder for all businesses to compete. Also, when foreign investors looking at a country's profile and they see that we're not inconsistent with the international laws when it comes to money laundering and the financial laws, they're deterred from investing in your country. So a lot of those roadblocks were put up, or barriers were put up in the way of the PPP in the last, the 10th Parliament, which really restricted a lot of foreign investments from coming in the country. We have a plan moving forward, and that's why it's important at this elections for everyone to come out and vote for the PPPC, so we have that majority and we can push through all these critical legislations that would attract foreign investors and ensure that we have a framework that investors feel very comfortable with.
Now, we're just touching on a few issues. I want to focus on the manifesto. You mentioned earlier about the PPPC's manifesto, and contrast that with what is being offered by the opposition. In fact, at one point they even disassociated themselves from their own manifesto. What I find troubling, and when you look at it just from the layman's perspective, is that here's the opposition, and you just pointed out that governments make money from taxes. That is how they could afford to provide goods and services to a population. You're going to cut your taxes dramatically through various forms, increasing the threshold by almost 100% and so forth. And at the same time, you're going to dramatically increase spending. Now, for some, someone looking on, obviously that's going to put you in a lot of financial problems.
Yeah, you look at the manifesto, they leaked the manifesto the Thursday, the New York manifesto was coming out on the Saturday, and they wanted to steal some board thunder. But then by Friday, we started to point out all the inconsistencies in it, and the incompatibilities of it. It's a very mismatched and disjointed manifesto. It looks like a very crude cut and paste document. And we had a press conference this Saturday, so they pulled it and said, look, that thing that was leaked is not our final manifesto. So they're disassociating themselves from their own manifesto, with good reason. Because when you look at it, you listen to some of the campaign speeches in different areas, they're telling communities what they want to hear. And then when you try to align what they're telling the communities, and you look at that leaked document, the two don't mesh together, there's no convergence. So it's either attempting to mislead, but one of the biggest things with the manifesto that we noticed was that they said on 2 occasions, for taxes, they don't have a plan for taxes yet. Also, they don't have a development plan. That manifesto is supposed to be your development plans, but in the manifesto, all it's telling us that we will create a plan only when we get into power after May 11, we'll do all the necessary consultations, which raises a very important question, Romel. What were the opposition doing all the time while they were in opposition over the past 3 years and even before? I've been at the Chamber of Commerce for a number of years, and I can't remember any time anyone from the opposition ever approaching me about consultations for tax reform or plans for the economy. So now they're saying, we don't have any plan for taxes besides, like you rightly said, reducing our revenues, um, cutting the VAT and increasing the threshold, which raises another issue and another important thing. You look at the manifesto, it talks about spend, 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 incentives, goodies, free goodies, and giveaways. But there's nothing specific in that manifesto that was leaked that speaks to how do we make the income to fund all these projects that we're talking that we can achieve. Everybody know the basic person knows that you have to make money before you can spend money. Our manifesto is very responsible. We are not trying to look at things from a politically popular standpoint or expedient standpoint. That's easy to do. We can promise all sort of hairy-fairy or unrealistic goals. But our manifesto is very responsible, it's very comprehensive, very well thought out, forward-looking, and it's very focused on the working class.
Now, bearing in mind that, and obviously, there is the worry that some persons will fall for some of these larger than life promises being made by the opposition. What is the feedback? You've been out in the communities, you've been speaking, you've been on the television stations interacting with the people. What has been the general sense on the ground of persons?
Well, the sense is everybody wants to hear what are the plans, what are our plans. That's why we already have our plans out. The opposition don't have a plan, even though we're just about 11 days to elections. They're taking even longer since leaking the one, and we've released ours on Saturday. Today's Thursday. There's still not a plan from them. It tells you that these guys don't have solutions. They don't have answers for this country. They don't have the plans that are necessary, and economic plans. People can talk all sorts of fancy and sound good on campaign when they speak, but to actually devise a realistic plan that doesn't send our macroeconomic profile into chaos, meaning increasing inflation, making it harder for our Guyanese folks to even borrow money, hurting our international profile, our international image. I see also within their manifesto that they put out there, they're reverting to some of the policies of the past. They don't like us to talk about the past, but you can't. If you're going to ask us to judge us on our record, which is 22 years, and I'm saying we started from ground zero in 92, because you have to look at what happened prior to 92. This is your record. But you're already seeing there some policies that are inconsistent with some of the international obligations. They're talking about, I'm sure they'll take these things out now, know that they've hurt us. They're talking about buying only laptops that are made here in Guyana. Again, we are one of the freest countries when it comes to global trade. We allow both importers and our local producers equal rights, which contributes another WTA. There's local content requirements also there where they're telling you we need to put some indigenous hiring practices. Those things are inconsistent with WTO laws. You can go into the specifics, but overall, you can, if you read the different sections of it, it's very incoherent.
Great, thank you very much. What we'll do is we'll take one last break and we'll rejoin you shortly.
Yeah, that's why we're looking to establish the bridge across the Quarantine to Suriname, which will bring a lot of the productive activities to that region. We have specific plans to even Region 3, Region 5, 6, 10, all these different regions, taking a lot of it out to Georgetown. Direct with the rural community, I spoke about the revolving fund. We will also look at helping farmers bring their produce from the farms to the market, help them subsidize with boats, build the necessary roads and logistics to make it easier for them. Drainage and irrigation is also a critical issue when we look at rural community development. And there's lots of other initiatives within our manifesto which focuses on rural development and rural growth, and lots of incentives there. Another issue I want to touch on, Romel, before we wrap up here this morning or this evening, is the issue of education. We're now moving towards, we're looking to modernize the university again to make it a truly a world-class institution. We look at some of the programs that are being offered and ensure that those programs meet the reality that our private sector is now evolving into. We look at oil and gas, we're drilling currently, and that might come on stream. But what is particular for me is what you're seeing. Just recently, Texas University announced that they're going to build a massive campus to the tune of 20 million US. Adjacent to that, there's another plan for another university to go. So we have now private tertiary institutions. There's Nations University also, which are competing now with our national university, which raises the standard of education, the quality of tertiary education, and training our skilled labor force, both with private and the government side. With the University of Guyana, we're also looking to make a major impetus towards the online universities. So those in the rural communities, let them, or anywhere far out, you don't have to come to Georgetown or go to Borbies.
Yes.
If you want to attend university, you can acquire a diploma or your degree right from your own home or from your community. It saves a lot, and it also promotes the agenda of education. So even there, we have the most robust plans for the country moving forward. And again, these are things we're building on, which we've already started, programs we've already started.
So, finally, in closing, obviously it is very important for you to touch the viewers out there, encourage them to obviously come out. It is very important. This is a very, very important elections. It will decide the future, basically. Just by talking here, already we know the alternatives, right? What the opposition have to offer, what the government has to offer. I'm sure it's very critical for persons.
I say don't take this elections for granted. Don't assume, you see large crowds when you go to rallies and you assume that the PPPC will automatically win the elections. It's important that you come out early on May 11th, come out early and vote. Make sure when you get into the voting booth that you put your X next to the box with the cup, and ensure you put 2 X's. There's one there for the general and one for the regional. That is critical. Tell all your friends, your family. Yeah, encourage all your family and friends to come out and vote on May 11th. Let them come out early. It's also very important to pick the team, which is the PPPC team, which has the experience of running this economy and putting this economy forward, setting the foundation so that we can enjoy a brighter future. It is also important that you come out and vote for the most capable team, which is the PPPC team, with all the experts on board to take your economic future and your economic advancement forward. So I encourage every Guyanese to come out and vote on May 11th and elect the PPPC.
Good. Thank you very much. That was Mr. Clinton Erling, national candidate for the People's Progressive Party Civic. Thank you once again.
Thank you, man.
And just a reminder, May 11th, it is very, very important. It will determine our future. You have to come out and vote for the PPPC. I'm Romel Roopnarine. Goodbye.